back, ladies and gentlemen. This is your girl Nyambura. Once again, I'm back. I'm excited. I'm happy. Nice to see all of you, ladies and gentlemen. It's yet another day when we get to talk about something else today that is quite interesting, that I've been hearing people talking about, and sometimes I'm like, oh my God, why do people like using big terminologies that sometimes scare us? They make us wonder, that's not for me. All right? I don't know about you. I don't know whether you have ever felt like, what are people talking about? Why do people like using big terminologies to describe very simple things in life? What terminologies am I talking about today? Now, I want to talk about a very interesting word that is found in the dictionary, and that word is called a revolution. And why do I want to talk about a revolution? Now, I am living in a space, in a world where people are talking about the fourth industrial revolution, blockchain technology revolution, and sometimes I'm like, okay, it's not that complicated. It's simple. It is so simple. And the more we make it simple, the better it is for us to understand, and the better it is for us to learn what needs to be done so that we don't have to be swept away by the currents and the waves. All right? So that's what I want us to talk about today. I want us to talk about the fourth industrial revolution. What is this fourth industrial revolution people are talking about, and why should I care about it? Why should you care about it? Why should it concern you? Now, from a dictionary definition, a revolution is a new way of doing things. And therefore, people are talking about the fourth industrial revolution, which means what? There has been other major revolutions that have happened in the human history, and that's why they're talking about the fourth industrial revolution. So let's look at, okay, what is the chronology of these revolutions that have happened previously? Now, I don't want to go into history, the things that made most of us fail in school. I don't want to do that, and I don't want you to even think about it. It doesn't even really matter. It only matters because you can now be able to make reference to it and say, oh, that's why they taught us about those things. I didn't even know how they would apply, right? If you're like me, I never used to like history. I thought it was so bogus. I mean, can you imagine learning things like about agrarian revolution? Do you guys remember agrarian revolution? It made me hate history with my whole heart, and I decided I am dropping that topic. But guess what? History is a part of our life. Even though we didn't pass history in high school or we didn't like it, it is part of human life. So we cannot dismiss it, we cannot ignore it, because we can learn from it and be able to interpret what is going to happen tomorrow and how our world is going to be shaped tomorrow. Now, the first revolution is what we like to call the Stone Age. I mean, Stone Age, what is that? Anyway, it's an era in which human beings used to make tools out of stones. Like, you could carve a spear out of a stone, and of course, if you are good at making spears, so people would pay you, and maybe they would bring you a lot of meat in exchange for your spears. And that's how some people really literally made it in life. That was the Stone Age. The first, what we would call the first revolution, if there was such a word. But now, in the 1700s and early 1800s, a new revolution took shape. And that is what we refer to as the Industrial Revolution. Now, the Industrial Revolution basically is just an advancement of the Stone Age, because now human brains, human capacity was in a place where people realized, why do I need to keep carving one tool out of a stone? If I can line up these tools in a factory, I put raw materials here, finished product will come out of there. And guess what? As a result, I can produce goods in masses and I can sell them. And that is what led to the world that we know today. Mass production. That is the language that is spoken in the Industrial Revolution. Then, in the late 1990s, early 2000, the third Industrial Revolution checked in. And that is what we call the Internet or the Information Era. Now, how was this better or different from the Industrial Revolution? Now, remember the Industrial Revolution was an upgrade of the Stone Age era, which lasted for thousands of years. Now, Industrial Revolution lasted for thousands of years, and it was more about mass production, industrialization, the creation of the infrastructure that we know today. When the internet revolution, or the third industrial revolution came in, it brought in a new aspect of digitalization and information exchange. In fact, the greatest thing is about information, exchange of information. Now, it made us realize that, hey, if I understand the internet, I don't need to own the means of production. I don't need to work like in the industrial era for me to make money. Why? Because I can put a platform, I can create a platform, because now I have access, I have knowledge about what's happening in the market, where the goods and services are coming from, and where the intended market is. I can create a platform and enable the suppliers or the producers of these goods and services to get access to the customer. And when that happens through my platform, they pay me a lot of money. And that's why most of the platforms today that have made some of the richest people on earth, that's exactly what they do. If you think about it, what is Uber? The creators of Uber, they don't need to own a car. They don't need to own a customer. All they need to do is create a platform where the owner of the car comes and the customer comes, they meet, they do whatever they do, they agree on what they do, and they pay the owner of Uber, right? What is Facebook? You and I today, we are selling our products on Facebook. Facebook doesn't need to own any of that stuff. All they need is to give you a platform where you can exchange your photos if that is what you like, or if you're more serious, you can sell your wares on Facebook. The customers will buy from you. And when you guys do that, guess who makes the money? Facebook does. That is what the internet era brought to us. But now, guess what? For the last 13 years, the world is talking about blockchain revolution, or the fourth industrial revolution. So what is this? Now, before I talk about this, I want to go back for just one moment to show you how technology is unforgiving. How technology doesn't care whether you understand it or you don't. Now, during the Industrial Revolution era, which is the period where some of us were born, and many people who may be watching this may have been born later. Maybe they cannot relate to that Industrial Revolution, but I got a chance to kind of relate with it, understand what was happening, and then I moved on into the internet era. Now, during the Industrial Revolution phase, how did we used to communicate? Let's say if I was in a city like Nairobi, or I was in London, or I was in New York, or whatever, and my parents were in a different city or in a different town. How did we used to communicate? We used to write letters, then post them through an industry called post office, which was a global industry. I mean, it belonged to every country. And then the post office would take that letter, and after some period of time, they would deliver the letter to my mother through whatever address I had provided. And we all know, most of us know, like from where I come from, our parents didn't even have access to a post office private box. They used to use maybe the local school, or the church, or the cattle dip, whatever, or maybe a good neighbor's address, a good neighbor who had a paid up box. All right? Now, when the internet came, there was something that significantly happened. And I want you guys to really reflect on this issue. I do remember, because I was just about graduating from the university, I do remember there being such a huge resistance about computerization. Most companies were resisting computerization because there was a threat. There was a conversation that was going on, and it sounded like a threat that when these computers come, people are going to lose their jobs. So people resisted. And some of the people that I remember really resisted were people who were working in the post office and industry, especially in the parts of the country where I come from, because I remember them sometimes even demonstrating there were issues. They weren't comfortable. But the question is, the internet came, all right? The digital revolution came. What happened to an industry like the post office? Remember, they used to control the mailing of our letters. They used to control the phone booths. I mean, for some people, they cannot even relate with a phone booth. A phone booth was literally a booth, a place where you could go make a call, and it was like a house. You could enter inside, and you're shielded from the sun or from the rain as you're making a call, right? And those phone booths, those telephone booths of those days used to be connected with a real wire, that goes through a pole, and the wire runs around the road to the next, to the next booth, or to the next operator's office or something like that. But because there was a bit of resistance when the internet came, and these guys, when I think about them sometimes, I'm like, they weren't resisting because they didn't want it. They were resisting because they didn't know what it was, because they didn't really quite understand what it was. But guess what? As sure as the sun rises, the internet technology came. And as sure as the sun set, the post office industry was killed, permanently forgotten. A lot of our young children today, if you tell them about posting a letter, they'll be like, what do you mean, post a letter? What do you mean by that? What is to post a letter? How do you do that? Why? Because they've grown up in the internet era. A time when, if I want to communicate with my mother right now, I can just go to my cell phone, send her a text message, or even call, or even email her, depending on what works for me. And they get the message instantly. Those days, our parents would take like 2 weeks, 3 weeks to get your message. And sometimes it could have been a crisis situation. But that is what a revolution does. A revolution changes the way things were done before and brings the new way of doing things. And that is exactly what the internet did. And I know for most of us, we may have forgotten. Because who keeps remembering how about writing letters? Who cares about that? Who remembers about waking up to queue to go to a phone booth to make a call, and you had to use an operator who would tell you to put coins and they dial things and you're like, oh my God, sometimes it would be a nightmare to make a phone call. Today, because you have access to a mobile phone, and your mobile phone, by the way, does not have connecting wires. It is a phone you put in your pocket, right? Because we are now accustomed to this new technology, a lot of us have forgotten what a revolution is. A lot of us have forgotten what it meant to live before the internet. And why am I talking about this? Because the world now is engaging in a conversation about the fourth industrial revolution. And this fourth industrial revolution is going to be as unforgiving as the internet was. Anybody who is going to resist and say, those things I don't do, I don't care about those things, I don't understand them. Hey, technology has no respect. Technology is going to deal with you and me the way we position ourselves. But guess what? There is a good news. There is a piece of good news. You don't have to be a victim of technology. I am challenging you, anybody listening to me, please take it upon yourself to understand what this fourth industrial revolution is, or the blockchain technology is, because guess what? The conversation has been there for like 13 years. Now it has gone mainstream. Governments are having that conversation. Institutions are having that conversation. Central banks are having that conversation. And if that is the case, things start shifting, which a lot has already started happening. Some of us will be like, what just hit me? What has happened? What am I supposed to do? Hey, and guess what? A lot of people are very skeptical about blockchain technology because some of the things that they have associated with blockchain technology with are things that have scammed to them money. And I agree. I've been a victim. And I feel you. But let me tell you, that doesn't mean a damn thing. That will not stop the technology from coming. If you remember very well, when the internet came, there were so many companies that shot up from nowhere. People bought shares in those companies, and then all of a sudden they disappeared. How many angels have been in the internet that promise to multiply people's money, and you said them, even now, knowing that you cannot trust somebody who's behind the screen and you don't even know who they are? Yes, even blockchain has brought those. In fact, it's even worse in blockchain, because blockchain enables anybody to do whatever they want. But guess what, ladies and gentlemen? That is neither here nor there. The truth of the matter is that this technology is here, and it's a revolution. It is going to permanently change things the way we know them. If you remember when Uber came, before Uber, there used to be taxis that used to stop by our gates and in our neighborhoods, and you would go and negotiate if you want to take a taxi, and you negotiate where you want to go, and they would tell you the price, and you would pay. But when Uber came, do you guys remember those guys of those taxis going into the streets, demonstrating and even banning some Uber cars? Where are they today? They all had to adapt and forget that mode of doing things and move their vehicles to Uber. Otherwise, they were going to become jobless. And those are just two examples of how this technology has revolutionized things, and also how those who took advantage of this technology have been able to eat out of nothing. Think about it. Do you ever, guys, you buy from Jumia, you shop every day from Jumia. Do you think Jumia wants any of those things that you buy? No. It is suppliers who bring, and you're the customer, you meet there, and guess what? As long as you're using their platform, they make money out of you. Now, if today you understand what this blockchain technology is and the opportunities it is going to present, guess what? Most of us who will do that, we will permanently change our lives, and we will create opportunities that will outlive us and that will benefit our generations for years to come. But guess what? The choice is ours. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is a conversation I wanted us to talk about. And this is part 1 of explaining what an evolution is. Stay tuned because a lot more is coming your way. Remember to subscribe to my channel. Remember to like and share this video and share it with as many of your friends as possible, because this conversation needs to be happening in our homes, on our dining tables, in our living room. We need to be discussing this conversation because the tsunami is coming and we don't have to be victims of the tsunami. In fact, we can turn the tsunami in our favor and change a lot of things. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. It's always a pleasure to see all of you. It's always a pleasure to know that you guys are listening. Kindly remember